Peppa Pig and the ball rolling in the wind. The ball lies still on the grass. A gentle breeze blows. The ball slowly rolls away, even though no one touches it. Peppa widens her eyes and tilts her head as she watches. Peppa walks after the ball. Without running fast, the ball rolls slowly, changing direction with the wind. George runs over and points at the ball. Just in time, Peppa catches up too. Peppa gently places her foot on the ball. Peppa gently kicks the ball over to George. George gently kicks the ball back to Peppa. Peppa kicks the ball too hard, and it flies up. Peppa and George run after the ball. Peppa hugs the ball in her arms. Peppa turns to George and smiles happily. Peppa Pig and the little round ball. In front of Peppa's house, with gentle sunshine, a small round ball slowly rolls into the yard. Peppa stands and looks, tilting her head curiously. George sits behind, watching the ball. Peppa bends down and gently pushes the ball with her hand. The ball rolls toward George. George happily stands up. George kicks the ball a little too hard, and the ball rolls faster. The ball rolls past Peppa, and Peppa runs after it. From a distance, Daddy Pig watches. Peppa stops the ball. Peppa gently kicks the ball toward George. George catches the ball and laughs loudly. Daddy Pig appears, and the whole family laughs happily. Peppa Pig and the blooming flower. Peppa Pig and the shape-shifting cloud. Peppa and George sit on the grass in the garden. High above, white clouds drift slowly across the blue sky. George points up at the sky, excited. Peppa squints as she watches a big cloud drifting by. Daddy Pig sits nearby, holding a cup of water, and looks up at the two children. Mommy Pig sits beside them, smiling gently. The cloud slowly turns into the shape of a chubby little pig. Peppa jumps up excitedly and points at the sky. A moment later, the cloud stretches out and turns into the shape of a dinosaur. George's eyes light up, and he jumps up happily. The cloud slowly breaks apart into many small pieces and drifts away. Peppa and George laugh happily. Peppa Pig and the ripe apple tree. Peppa spots the apple tree, heavy with ripe red apples. She bounces up and down, reaching as high as she can. But the apples sway teasingly above her, just out of reach. George grabs the tree trunk and shakes it with all his strength. A few apples tumble down with a satisfying thud, but instead of landing in their hands, the apples roll, roll, roll far away. Peppa and George scramble after them, completely out of breath. Exhausted, the two sit under the tree, ready to give up. Suddenly, a gust of wind shakes the branches. One shiny apple drops straight down, rolling right to Peppa's feet. George picks it up proudly, holding it like treasure. Peppa giggles. The two share the apple, munching happily under the tree. The pig family arrives at a farm to try being farmers for the day. "We're going to be farmers and take care of the plants," Peppa says. Everyone gets ready to start working on the farm. Peppa and George start watering the plants. "I'm going to water the plants so they can grow big and strong," Peppa says. George helps his sister by watering around the garden. Peppa and George begin to pick ripe tomatoes from the garden. "Look, our tomatoes are ready," Peppa says. The pig family continues to pick vegetables and put them in their baskets. After a hard day's work on the farm, the pig family sits down to enjoy the vegetables they just picked. "We can eat what we've grown with our own hands," Daddy Pig says. Everyone enjoys a meal and feels proud of their hard work. After a hard day's work, the pig family sits down to rest. "Being a farmer is fun, but I like playing more," Peppa says. Daddy Pig laughs and says, "Helping on the farm is good, but playing is fun too." The whole family laughs and feels proud of their work. Peppa's Great Ball Chase. Peppa kicks the ball and it rolls down the hill. Yahoo! Peppa and George run after it, but the ball keeps rolling faster. The ball falls into a flower bush, and Peppa crawls in to look for it. George is delighted when he sees Peppa find the ball. The two of them continue playing football in the park. Peppa and the colorful balloons. Peppa walks into the garden and sees a bunch of colorful balloons. Peppa opens her eyes wide and runs closer. Whoa! George runs after her, looking curiously at the balloons. Peppa gently touches the balloons. George points at the blue balloon and smiles. Peppa gives one balloon to George. George hugs the balloon and runs around. Peppa throws a balloon into the air. Peppa and George look up, surprised. Daddy Pig comes out and sees the balloons floating high. Daddy Pig holds the balloon strings tightly. Peppa and George jump up happily. Peppa and George play together with a bunch of colorful balloons. The whole family laughs happily. Teddy Bear Rescue. George tossed Teddy up to play. But oh no! Teddy didn't come back down. Instead, he got stuck high up on a tree branch. Peppa jumped as high as she could. George stretched his arms as far as he could, but Teddy stayed firmly on the branch. Just as the two were about to give up, a sudden gust of wind blew in. Teddy fell from the branch and landed neatly in George's arms. George hugged Teddy as if reuniting with a long-lost friend, while Peppa giggled under the tree. And so, the Teddy rescue mission ended, not thanks to any plan, but thanks to the wind itself. Peppa and the Little Umbrella House. Peppa walks into the garden and sees an umbrella lying on the grass. Peppa curiously walks closer. Peppa presses the button and the umbrella pops open. Peppa is slightly startled, then smiles happily. George hears the sound, runs over, and looks at the open umbrella. Whoa! Peppa slowly lowers the umbrella to the floor. Peppa gently pats the floor to signal George. George crawls under with her. A gentle breeze makes the umbrella tilt slightly. The two siblings try to steady the swaying umbrella. The umbrella becomes steady again. Peppa and George look at each other in relief. They both laugh happily. Peppa Pig and the opening box. Peppa and George are playing in the living room. In the corner of the room, there is a small cardboard box with its lid slightly open. Daddy Pig is sitting on a chair, and Mummy Pig is sitting beside him. Peppa bends down to look inside the box. George is also curious and leans closer to the box. The box shakes slightly, making both of them jump in surprise. Peppa opens the box completely. Daddy Pig sees it from a distance, so he walks over and leans in to look inside. Inside are a few toys. Peppa holds the toy, and George jumps up excitedly. Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig smile. The empty box lies still on the floor. Peppa and the Little Picnic. Peppa holds a small basket and looks around the grass. Peppa spreads the picnic blanket on the ground. George runs over, carrying a toy food box. Peppa smiles happily. Peppa sits down and puts the food on the blanket. Peppa pretends to eat and nods happily. George copies her and pretends to eat too. They both laugh together. Peppa lies on her back and looks up at the sky. George lies down next to Peppa. They watch the clouds slowly drifting by. Peppa and George smile and relax. It's a beautiful day, and Peppa and George go to the park with Daddy Pig, bringing along their colorful new kite. Daddy Pig excitedly runs as fast as he can to make the kite fly high. But Daddy Pig suddenly trips over a rock. The kite still soars up high, but then gets stuck on the statue's ear in the park. Peppa and George look up, both surprised and giggling. A strong gust of wind blows through, pulling the kite down and covering Daddy Pig's head. He stumbles around blindly, while Peppa and George burst into fits of giggles. What was supposed to be a simple trip to the park turns into an unexpected comedy show. The wind blows stronger, making the kite slip right out of Daddy Pig's hand and swirl around in the sky. Peppa and George run after it, giggling and reaching up to catch it. Daddy Pig hurries along too, but quickly becomes out of breath. One morning, Peppa wakes up and looks around her room. Toys are scattered all over the floor. Books lie in a messy pile on the desk, and the blanket and pillows are all over the bed. Peppa puts her hands on her hips, sighs, but decides she will turn her messy room into a tidy, cozy place. Peppa starts picking up each toy, sorting them by shape and color, then placing them into different boxes. One for cars, one for stuffed animals, and one for building blocks. Each time she closes a lid, she stacks the boxes neatly against the wall. Peppa folds her blanket carefully, smoothing out each corner. While folding, a big teddy bear hidden inside the blanket falls to the floor. Peppa giggles, hugs the bear for a moment, then places it neatly at the head of the bed, right next to her favorite pillow. After After dusting the desk and arranging the books neatly, Peppa steps back to look at the whole room. Everything is clean and tidy. The floor is clear and shiny. Peppa lies down on the bed, hugs her teddy bear, and enjoys the cozy feeling of her freshly cleaned room. Peppa and the leaf on her head. Peppa walks slowly in the garden. A leaf falls down from above. The leaf gently lands on Peppa's head. Peppa doesn't notice and keeps walking. Peppa stops and looks around. The leaf on the head gently wiggles in the breeze. George runs over and looks at Peppa's head. George points and giggles. Peppa reaches up to her head, but can't quite reach it. The leaf falls into Peppa's hand. A gentle breeze blows. The leaf blows away from Peppa's hand. Peppa and George watch it fly away and smile. The leaf swirls gently and falls to the ground. Peppa picks up the leaf and places it on George's head. George stays still for a moment, then smiles. Peppa laughs happily. Peppa and two leaves. Peppa walks around the garden. Peppa sees two leaves lying on the grass. One leaf is big and one leaf is small. Peppa picks up the big leaf and looks at it closely. Peppa picks up the small leaf with her other hand. Peppa compares the two leaves. Peppa puts the two leaves on the ground. A gentle breeze blows by. The small leaf starts rolling across the grass. Peppa is surprised and runs after the leaf. George runs over. The leaf stops at his feet. At the same time, Peppa runs up just in time. Peppa picks up both leaves again. Peppa tosses the two leaves into the air. The two leaves spin and float down slowly. Peppa and George raise their hands to catch the leaves. One leaf lands on George's head. Peppa sees it and laughs happily. George laughs too. Peppa Pig and Tidy Up Day. Peppa and George's room. Toys are scattered all over the floor. Teddy bears, balls, and building blocks. Peppa looks around the room, a little surprised. George sits among the toys, happily playing. Mummy Pig walks in smiling. Mummy Pig hands a toy box to Peppa. Peppa picks up a teddy bear and puts it into the box. George picks up a ball, but it rolls away. Daddy Pig comes in from outside.
Aha!
Daddy Pig picks up the ball and hands it back to George. George smiles happily. Peppa and George are inside the house. Peppa holds a sheet of blue paper. Carefully, she folds the paper into the shape of an airplane. Beep, beep, beep. Peppa makes the sound of a plane taking off. Peppa gives the paper plane to George. George smiles widely. He holds the plane and runs around the room. Whoosh, whoosh. George makes the sound of the plane flying in the air. Peppa claps her hands to cheer on her little brother. George runs near the window. He throws the plane. The plane flies out the window, loops around once, and lands on the green grass in the garden. Peppa and George watch in surprise. Peppa and George run outside into the garden together. They look everywhere for the paper plane. Hooray! Hooray! George shouts when he finds the plane on the lawn. They both pick it up and run back inside the house, laughing happily. Peppa and the Rolling Balloon. Peppa walks into the living room. A small toy car lies on the floor. Peppa sees the toy car and gets an idea.
2 hours later.
Peppa holds a balloon. Peppa ties the balloon string to the back of the toy car. Peppa gently pushes the car. The car rolls slowly. The balloon sways behind. Peppa opens her eyes wide with delight. George runs into the room. George sees the toy car rolling. George lightly taps the car. The car rolls faster on the floor. The car rolls around the living room. Peppa and George run after the car.
Yahoo!
After catching the car, they look at each other and laugh happily. Peppa Pig and the Wandering Leaf. Peppa and George are playing in the garden.
Yahoo!
Daddy Pig is standing nearby, watering the flowers. A yellow leaf gently falls down in front of Peppa. A gust of wind blows past. A yellow leaf gently falls in front of Peppa. Peppa runs after it, with George toddling along behind her. Daddy Pig looks up and watches. The leaf floats past Daddy Pig and then lands on his head. Daddy Pig is startled. Daddy Pig smiles as the leaf gently falls down beside Peppa. Peppa holds the leaf while George stands beside her happily. All three of them look at the leaf and they all burst out laughing. Peppa and the apple on the high table. A red apple sits on a tall table. Ooh!
Aha!
2 hours later.
Peppa Pig in the flower basket. The garden in front of Peppa's house, with gentle sunshine. A small basket is placed on the grass. Peppa bends down to look at the basket and smiles. George stands beside her, curiously looking into the basket. Peppa gently picks a flower nearby. Peppa places the flower into the basket. George points to another flower. Peppa and George pick a few more small flowers. The flower basket slowly fills up. Peppa sits down and admires the flower basket. George giggles. Mommy Pig stands nearby, and all three are happy together. Today, Maria and George have found an old car tire in the garden. It's round and shiny black, looking rather mysterious. Maria has an idea. Let's roll it. So the two begin pushing the tire around the garden, giggling as it wobbles along. But, oh dear, the tire suddenly rolls away, right down the little slope outside. Maria and George gasp and chase after it. Their tiny feet scramble as fast as they can, dust flying everywhere, while the tire rolls faster and faster and faster. The tire bounces straight into the vegetable patch. Thump! A carrot shoots into the air. Whoosh! Lettuces tumble all over the ground. Daddy Pig, who was watering the plants, looks up in surprise. He rubs his eyes in disbelief. A naughty tire is wrecking the whole garden. Daddy Pig hurries over, ready to scold them. But when he sees Maria and George laughing loudly in the puddle, he can't help but laugh too. Mud sprays everywhere. Their clothes are filthy, but everyone is happy. For Maria and George, even an old car tire can turn into the best game ever.